what a week it's been, and just the right kind of introduction for Miningweb Weekly with our man, Peter Major from Modern Corporate Solutions. The gold price, which Peter's been warning about, the bubble keeps getting stronger. It almost looks like it's a bit of a blowout now, over $4,800 an ounce. And lots of other interesting things that are happening at the moment. Trump wanting Greenland. Is it because of the rare earths? Are they that important? Is it worth going to war for? We'll find out all of these issues and more from Peter Major. Peter, it's been an interesting few days. Donald Trump saber rattling, or at least getting everybody in a bit of a tiz over in Europe. In Davos, he's delivering a speech to the gathered people there, many of them his friends now. Suddenly Trump has gone from enemy number one to friend number one. Aren't these people just so hypocritical? It's extraordinary. Take a position and stick with it. Don't be so obsequious and suck up to a guy just because he's got power at the moment. Strange, but I guess that's the world, isn't it?
Alec, it is. And honest, I am glad I'm not in front of him, because I'm not sure how much I would bend and suck up to him, but I know I would. If getting along with the guy is going to get me an objective, I'll do it. And you have to draw a line. How much are you going to prostrate yourself? How much are you going to fry those that you like and respect in order to get someone's attention? But I think, without a doubt, every person that has to do anything with him does serious recalibration, because we've seen what happens if you try to be straightforward and state your mind. If it doesn't align with him perfectly, you get chucked out and you get nothing. And this is the most powerful guy in the world. He can allocate military force, he can allocate economic force, political force. So darn it, everybody's on a minefield around him, because he can give you so much. He can literally give you more than Moses ever got from God. So it alters the way people think, act, and talk around him.
And here in South Africa, there's been a reluctance to even give him the time of day. It's been an interesting way that the South African government has played it, perhaps sometimes to our detriment.
Much more to our detriment, Alec, than to our advantage. We really went into this blind. And hell, everybody in the administration today in South Africa, they saw and dealt some way with Donald Trump in his first term. And so they should have been well prepared. And they weren't well prepared. And look, I don't blame them for so much doing what they wanted to do and they'd been doing for 25 years, as much as I blame them for not recalibrating and readjusting when Donald got elected, because they should have seen they got dragged over the coals about their voting in the United Nations back when he was president, and he was holding up trade agreements and voting records and saying, you guys vote against us much more than Russia and China, who are not our friends. So our guys were oblivious. I can't believe they were that thick, but their actions and the results show they are that thick or that arrogant and didn't care.
And Cyril Ramaphosa not going to Davos, it's a bit of a statement. He likes to visit there. He likes to shake hands with those that he gets on with. It is the Trump show, no question. There are more Americans in Davos this year than I think any time. It does appear as though, as I said before, it's the Donald Trump show. But South Africa is completely absent. Maybe a protest in a way.
I hope not, and it's stupid. You're head of a country, an important country, a very important country, and maybe you've done and said some wrong things. Maybe some intentionally, maybe some accidental. But put on your best suit, put on your best smile, and use a little psychology 101 and get your rear over there. You're doing it for the people of South Africa, not for your party, not for your personal or your friends. You're doing it for the people and country of South Africa. And get over there and be a man and be proud, but not too proud. Don't denigrate yourself, but show up. All countries' leaders are supposed to be there, as far as I know. And we should definitely have been there.
Well, that's our little comment on what's going on at the World Economic Forum. And let's look at the big picture now and the gold price, which just keeps rocketing ahead. A few weeks ago, you explained and you showed the data, you showed the graphs, you showed the relatives. We're in bubble territory. But what's it going to take to prick this bubble?
We need to know the people behind this run, what their objectives are, their medium, short-term, long-term plans. And I'm afraid I don't know that, Alec, but without a doubt, this is big money, big power driving this. And I had a nice table I saw yesterday that said gold is the number one valued asset on the planet and silver is now second. And I think NVIDIA is third. And that's a pretty powerful statistic. And you can imagine, we saw it with Bitcoin. If you get enough people that believe Bitcoin is good value and they all turn and start buying it, that's what happens. And I remember Davis Borkham Hare in 1989. I'm starting at Alan Gray and Dave Giese comes by and he tells me about the Chinese are starting to buy gold. He says, Peter, all we need is each Chinese to buy a gram of gold. It's going to upset this balance and the price is going. So you better load up on gold shares. Now that was pretty simplistic, but there was a man named Alan Gray that actually bought into that. And the team and I, Jack Mitchell at the time, we got in trouble because we didn't quite buy into it. And when Saddam invaded Kuwait, the gold price shot and Alan exploded. I told you that's how tight this market was. And you guys discounted it. But by the time I got back from leave, I think they'd invaded Iraq and the price fell. But I think we're seeing that now. I think we're seeing buying and central banks represent a lot of people. But here's the corollary, Alec. Yes, lots of countries are buying gold. We're not sure that the U.S. central bank is buying any gold or any silver. But I don't know how much silver they've got, but I know how much gold they've got, more than anybody else. So if China wants to devalue the dollar and keep buying gold, well, they're also they're pushing up the U.S. foreign reserves too, who owns mega tons of gold. So yeah, this is impossible to predict. I'd like to see what AI does for a prediction here. I just think you've got to keep looking at your alternative assets all the time. And when the discrepancy gets too big, the safe way out. And I'm not saying go in and buy oil now, but we're pushing 78-1 gold oil. We've only hit that once or twice, and it didn't stay there very long. Maybe more in a nanosecond, but not more in a couple of weeks. And that's the extreme differential between very well-known and necessary commodities in this planet. That's the kind of price differential we're looking at.
I guess some people would be looking at geopolitics and saying, but you've got a madman in the White House, whether he is a real madman or just playing as one. A good theory that we covered this week from Neil Ferguson saying that Trump is actually deliberately acting like a madman. Nixon tried it, didn't get it right, but he says Trump seems to be getting it right this time. And if people think you're crazy, then they give in much sooner. So that's on the one side. And on the other side, you do have the issue that it's at historic high levels in relative value. So where are we? Where are we on this? And do you just stay on the sidelines and wait for a better day, perhaps?
I thought you were going to ask me a question like that. Where are we? Right now, the mining resource sector in South Africa is 38% of our Aussie 40. Alec, I don't think I've seen it 38% in 25 years. I don't think I've seen it in this millennium. And when I was an analyst and fund manager, late 80s, all through the 90s, when there was a bit of a run, it would get up to 50, but it would fall down as low as 25. So gold and platinum now, they are 32%. They're a third of our index. And we don't even have any gold mines except for a couple, huh? Anglo Gold's got nothing here. Goldfields has one asset here. They got 20 assets out of here. And yet gold is now a third of our index. So it's dragging the index up. It's generating profits like this government's never seen. It's going to generate taxes like this government's never going to see again. And that's with 4/5 of our gold mines closed down. that we had a couple decades ago. 4/5 of them closed down, and yet I think that the earnings and the taxes, they're going to more than double. Hell, the revenue is almost going to double from 2024 when 2025. So it's pulling this economy along. As Pete Viljoen was saying, it's nothing to do with the government. In fact, if the economy is doing good and you see that the GNU is frozen, then you can attribute that to the government. You can actually give them credit for doing nothing. Because without a doubt, this economy, the less government, the more this economy flies. Because it's got a lot of good people. It's got great weather, great minerals, great shoreline. So if ever there was a country that would do better with less government, it's this one. But yeah, what does the average guy do? Well, if he's in the Aussie, he's got to be aware that gold and platinum is a third of that Aussie. And so the Aussie will come off when they come off. And the shares are discounting that. These gold shares are not reflecting today's price. I don't know how much less, but they're reflecting a price of maybe a week or two ago. So they're wary. The people buying these gold equities are wary that this price could pull back. And we know equities fall multiples of what the gold price does. Equities go up multiples of what the gold price does. It works both ways. How much money have you got? If you're that Chinese billionaire that says he's now put half his assets in gold, well, maybe he was tapped out in some property that was looking pricey and he's got the Chinese government nationalizing it and he can see properties in for a bad few years in China. Maybe that was an easy decision. And maybe he believes the Chinese government is going to support this kind of gold price. I think it's got 5,000 written on it. I just don't know how long it'll stay there. I think silver is going to hit 100. I don't know how long it's going to stay there. And it might even go more once it gets there. Last thing, and I'll let you speak. What is the ideal ratio of silver to gold, Alec? You can look at historical. The U.S. fixed it at 16-1. I think the Romans fixed it at something else. But what if we compare how much gold gets mined every year and how much silver gets mined every year? You know what the ratio is? Less than 7-1. Okay, I'm not saying it's going there, but that's all the gold. We mine 120 million ounces of gold a year. We mine 820 million ounces of silver. So theoretically, you could say silver could go to 300.
It's an interesting point, that, because even at the golf club now, they're talking about silver. It's something that's never really been a South African asset. And yet the public, if the golf club's anything to go by, is taking an interest.
Yeah, I think it's different. It's cute. It's easy to get a hold of. It's easy to sell. Rare earths sound cute, but how do you get a hold of them? How do you play the rare earths? And graphite, it crumbles in your fingers. Do you go out and buy a bunch of pencils because the graphite price is going up? But silver, well, right now you got two big sellers of silver in this country. You got Black Mountain, owned by Vedanta, and you got David Melville, who I see selling silver. I don't know where else you get silver in this country. Yeah, it's about the one metal we don't have.
Oh, good for you, David Melville. He certainly did reinvent his focus from being a financial advisor to just focusing on hard metals. And boy, he couldn't have timed it better.
Man, but, incredible.
Some good news in Saudi Arabia on their big find, 8 million ounces of gold discovered. South Africa, nothing. It's almost like Saudi Arabia, do me a favor. These guys are finding big gold deposits. Have we got no elephants left, or are we just not even looking for those elephants anymore?
We're not looking, Alec. That's what's happened. South Deep was Bre-X without the illusion. South Deep arguably was talking 100 million ounces. And I think they drilled and had blocked out. They were very sure it had 75 million ounces. Well, that's what Bre-X was. It was supposedly 100 million ounces. So yeah, we've got it at South Deep, and they've had to keep revising it until the last year or so. They had to keep revising it downward because the costs in this country were so high, especially at South Deep. And they were trying things that hadn't been done before. They were trying to go the full distance of that shaft, 3,300 meters in one go. And they found out It causes all kinds of bad vibrations. It destroys a rope sooner, or other bad things happen. They're trying mass mechanization, which is very expensive. And when it's that deep, you got rotten tank problems. So they kept revising that 75 million ounces down to 60, 50, 40. I'm out of touch. I'm rustier than hell. I don't know what it's at now, but I'll bet it's now revising up, because at 4,600, this country could have revised its resources threefold and been conservative. So yeah, like, people aren't really looking for those big ones here because we've got them. But we have no way of developing. We have no way of attracting money to develop them, because they're going to take 5 or 10 years. Now, our government likes to point out a guy named Robert Friedland, and that is a hard case to argue, because he has taken the long haul step. But he's managed to harness a lot of people's money other than his own. You know, his initial money was in there. He's diluted himself down and got his share price up. Very sharp operator. You know, he went in there with BE. Is he going to show a return on investment? Until about a year ago, I couldn't see it. But again, these prices are game changers. And I'm talking PGMs. You know, platinum more than doubled in 6 months. Palladium has doubled in 12 months. Rhodium has doubled. Those are game-changing moves. And Friedland had the guts to do it under a very difficult regime, but nobody's so far shown the willingness to follow.
Tell us about Robert Friedland and his Ivanhoe project. Platreefs was Ivanhoe Company's project. Where is it, and why? Because they did come out with a recent update, which was very positive. Why is it now coming into the consciousness of more people?
A few reasons, Alec. I think the first reason it's coming in front of everybody's radar is there's people going to space that are now staring at this South Africa country. And he is right next to Mogalakwena, that I think is a bigger hole than almost Sishen iron ore. So you can pick up Sishen from space and you can pick up Mogalakwena. Robert Friedland is right next to them, but he didn't get the property they did. His ore body is much deeper. Now they're slowly starting to go underground. Robert had to go underground from day one. And Robert doesn't know how to do anything other than the biggest and the best, right? So if you visit those shafts, you visit his head frames, they are monsters. The hoists he's putting in are monsters. They rival anything South Africa's ever done, and we're the biggest and best at that. So he spent a lot of money. And it's odd, if you fly over in a drone or an airplane, you can almost mistake it for Khayelitsha. You know, you've got this massive township surrounding that mine. He's got a very small footprint. And that backs up something I've always believed in. Underground mining takes less than 10% of the footprint of open pit. And it involves 5 to 10 times more people. That means 5 to 10 more jobs. So it does 10% of the economic damage, but employs 5 to 10 times more people. So yeah, Mogalakwena, they have to keep moving these townships, right? Because they're chowing up such huge amounts of land. And just think of the stripping ratios. You know, 9 and 10 to 1 stripping ratios are insane. All that energy, all that carbon, all that electricity, diesel, moving rock, and it's waste. So Robert's going down there. He's got this beautiful wide vein that Mogalakwena has, and they're going to be tapped into underground very similar to the way he does. So that project doesn't matter if you overrun on time and budget, money. At these kind of metal prices, it can repay itself pronto in a few years.
And how do investors participate?
They have to buy Ivanhoe Mines. It's an unlisted company. And I'm sure he's going to look at the current situation and say, wow, am I going to have these PGM prices going much longer? When's the best time to list? And he's probably reading the old Anglo-American book. When do you list a gold mine that you've built from scratch to lock in maximum return? And boy, with these kind of PGM prices, he's got to be chomping at the bits. I knew the mine manager there 6 years ago, who told me Robert was calling up every time platinum would barely budge. and say, damn it, can't we start mining sooner? Can I put more money in? Can I put more men there? I want to get mining. Man, he's probably really seeing it now. And they are starting to really mine now.
So that is a rare success story, but he is obviously a rare entrepreneur.
He is, and he's lucky, Alec. He'll punch me out if he's here. He hears Major say he's lucky. He'll say, I predicted this a long time ago. That's why I put 20 years of big money into the Congo. I predicted there's going to be a shortage of copper and the price is going to rocket. I predicted the West couldn't afford to ignore Congo and they're going to build a railroad that lets us get it out. And he has said that, and darn it, he's been right. The West has built that corridor through Angola to help get out copper. And he built the world's, if it's not the largest smelter in the world, it's the most modern one by far, and it's close to the largest. And he built that at the height of COVID, 2020 and 2021. And magnificent. And Congo is hard to get equipment to. So, geez, you can't take very much away from Robert Friedland. His results are there for everybody to see and play his old tapes. He was saying it over and over.
Yeah, I was put off him by the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson, where Jobs basically called him a con man. Not basically, he did call him a con man. But I suppose Jobs was in his 20s, and that's a long time ago. And Robert Friedland has moved on from there. But this environment, this Donald Trump environment, has got to be an absolute joy for a man like Friedland.
Yeah, and there's a gray line between a flim-flam man and a legitimate person. And who said Rhodes was the greatest flim-flam man? But look what he built. Now, I've never heard that said about the Oppenheimers. The methodical, clinical way they built and developed this country. And Rhodes, Rhodes turned a madhouse. It's like reading Titan about Rockefeller. What did Rockefeller find when he went out at Titusville? A bunch of madmen that were killing each other. Nobody was making money. A lot of guys were dying. And that's basically what Rhodes found. You got that giant hole at Kimberley with 1,000 cables going down, and everybody had a piece of land about the size of a rich guy's bathroom. Well, no wonder they were killing each other and accident rates were high. And Rhodes he couldn't believe people were that crazy. He wasn't a mining engineer, but he got a good one from America. Said, geez, there must be better ways of doing this. Nobody was making money then. So, yeah, is Robert a flim-flam man, Friedland? If he was, he's elevated himself to something else, Alec, without a doubt.
Well, and good news for South Africa as well, that Platreef is finally coming to fruition. Orion Minerals has had a fabulous couple of weeks, 36% jump. You told us to stick with it, and my goodness, the people who've been on it, due to Peter Major's recommendation, are delighted. What about now? What about, because I'm going to get those questions in our webinar. I didn't buy Orion, but is it too late?
No, at this copper price, it's not too late. If you don't think copper is going to come down, you can buy it at 32 cents. It's like I said before, Alec, I think they've issued so many feasibility studies that I've lost track of the last one, what copper price they used. But I'm pretty sure it was 6,000, maybe 7,000. So we were getting NAVs, reasonable net asset values of 70, 75 cents on $6,000 and $7,000 copper. Well, today copper is pushing 13,000. So I know that NAV's got to be way over $1. My worry is I'm too competitive when I was a fund manager, and I always want to make every percent I can. I always thought I was competing with the world. So if I saw something jump, I'd rather miss it than buy on the jump, and I'd hope and pray. And if it came back and I liked it, didn't have to come back much. It was just psychological warfare with myself. So you're right. When it jumps from 27 to 32, I'm not going to run in there. But a real fund manager that was really thinking long-term and had stable money, he'd say, Pete, I'm buying it. How far do you chase it? You don't want to be the only guy chasing it. But yeah, it's offering huge value at this price. It'll turn down if copper falls. Copper can fall from 13,000 to 12, Alec, and you watch. This thing will fall 20%. And yet it would have no bearing on the earnings, no bearing on the payback. But when a metal price falls, everybody stands back. They just want to know, how long is it going to fall? How low is it going to fall? Will it find a level that's... There's more talk about copper being justified at this price than there is gold and silver.
Well, that's the question. Would you be selling your gold and silver profits and channeling it into copper?
I think that is reasoning. I would do that, Alec. And they can sue me and shoot me. Yes. If you said, Pete, here's a couple Krugerrands, here's a silver brick, you can keep it, or you can take it and trade it for Orion at 32, 33 cents. I'd be gone and I'd back with a share certificate in 60 seconds. Yes. And that's the kind of switching I think we were talking about at the start of this program. Switching doesn't mean find something that hasn't moved or find something that hasn't moved as much. It means find something that you believe, for a lot of good reasons, has much, much more value than that other asset you're holding. And yeah, I think Orion, without a doubt, has much, much more value than a bullion price at 4,800 or even a silver price at 95. I'm a miner. Yeah, that ore's in the ground, and it's not discounting these prices. Not even close.
A few decades back now, I used to often talk with Nick Goodwin. Do you remember Nick Goodwin? He was a gold analyst.
Very well.
He had his charts called Susie, and he was so spot on for so long until he wasn't. But Nick often used to tell me, and he used to remind us week after week, that you should not be holding onto mining stocks or metals indefinitely. You should be trading them because they are cyclical. Is that what you're telling us?
That's what Nick is telling us right now. I talk to Nick, if not in person, I'm chatting with him every day, Alec. And I haven't seen Nick in years, but it's like we've never parted. And I agree with Nick 80, 90% of the time. And yes, we saw gold shares, the index, it was cyclical. It was cyclical from 1981 until literally a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, like a sine wave. And I love it. To me, that's a fund manager's dream, something that trades on a sine wave. Now, Bitcoin didn't. So that's just one of the reasons I didn't want it. That was an exponential trend, and it had too short of a life to come into a sine wave. Gold is on that kind of exponential trend now. Yeah, it's broken 2 standard deviations out, 1.5, and that's a game changer. And I'm with Nick. It will come back, and I'm not going to take bets here. I'm not buying these listed gold shares. I'm too scared, too conservative, old, and I'm not buying the gold for the same reasons. But yeah, Nick says that he had the most elaborate, complicated model out of all the gold analysts. And I think I used to deal with 14 of them. And he built that thing in the 70s. I don't know who helped him do it. Only Nick could run it. But you're right, Alec. He was right many, many more times, much, much more than he was wrong. And those of us who were too conservative, we got out of this gold run way too early. Okay, I was at your conference last year. People asked me, what am I holding? And I told them, I sold my Krugerrands. I sold my gold shares. But it's because I put all my money into a gold mine. And I got that mine when it was reflecting the gold price of 2000. And we got some assays back today that knocked me off my seat because we had so many dud assays previous to this, I was ready to throw in the towel. But we took a bulk assay in 3 different locations of it. So I think I got a Robert Friedland strategy. My mine will make money at $2,000 an ounce. So that's my call on gold. I put what I thought was high price gold back in April, May last year into something that hadn't moved yet.
Try to keep your head, try to keep rational when everybody else seems to be losing theirs.
That's right.
Just to close off with, this whole strategy nowadays amongst the mining companies seems to be buying rather than building. In other words, doing acquisitions, merging. The greenfields. I was watching on Bloomberg, the CEO of BHP Billiton was talking today on to Bloomberg at Davos, and he American guy, he loves Donald Trump, loves the administration, or certainly that's what he was saying right now. And they were asking him, one of the chaps, the other was quite clever, asked him about South 32 and how South 32, which was the South African largely assets of BHP Billiton, and was spun off because South Africa was not a good place and the assets were dirty. And you almost got a sense that BHP Billiton would like to have those assets back now. What's your thought on that one?
Oh, I think that all the time. I think, what would all of us give to have the Anglo-American that we had in the 80s and early 90s? Remember, Anglo Gold alone used to put out 250 tons of gold. This whole country is putting out 90 now. And platinum. And can you imagine if Anglos had all those assets? What do they accomplish by unbundling? They say, oh, now we're focused. Okay, you're focused. You're in diamonds, you're in iron ore, you're in copper, and you're talking about a big phosphate mine. So they're completely naked. They got no precious metal exposure. And the Anglo model was everything had to wash its face. Everything had to justify and show a return no matter what the metal price was, and they did it. That's why it outperformed the index all those years. In Billiton, no sooner had Brian Gilbertson merged them than they were thinking, okay, what can we unbundle? What can we send out? Was it too complicated for you guys to manage? Hey, why don't you sell down to 2 assets? That's easier to focus on than 4. Yeah, South 32. I thought they totally overpaid for this zinc asset a few years ago. I thought, who okayed that thing? And zinc hasn't even run, but they're in the right country now. America is the #1 mining destination of all countries. I think it's the Independence, enormous, rich copper mine. They've been working on it. I think it's BHP and Rio has been working together on this thing for 20 years. They're fighting the environmentalists. They're fighting with the Indians. They're fighting with who knows how many agencies. Apparently, Trump took about 2 weeks and he says, start mining on me. And so it's not just your ore grade. The IRR is based on time that you start spending the money in time to the production. And you can work out real easy on a sensitivity table. If it's going to take you 10 years, then you're going to need that metal price to be probably 4 times higher. If it takes you 2 years, you can probably get by with a flat metal price. That's the difference. So now the regulatory agencies in America are put on notice that if you're doing something to hinder the creation of jobs, to hinder American being self-sufficient, you are not patriotic, and you're going to incur the wrath of this administration. And vice versa's happening, and you got to watch out for the flim-flam men. People are now running to Donald saying, geez, I got this. I can get it producing. I just need this license. I just need permission. And there's going to be maybe too much of that. But hey, I'm even going to do it, Alec. I want to mine before I'm dead. And it makes sense for the country.
Makes even more sense for South Africa. But are we listening?
We're deflecting. Whatever we don't like, whatever doesn't gel with what our leaders have in their head, heaven knows what that is, it just gets deflected. Or they open one entrance and let it go out the other. I just know how can you be a leader of a country and not want to create jobs? How can you be a leader of a country and not want your people's GDP to go up, per capita to go up? How can you not say, I will do anything to create jobs and raise the income of my citizens? And who would vote a person like that out, even if they were a little bit corrupt, if they were delivering?
Well, it's an interesting conversation always when Peter Major talks to us on Miningweb Weekly. And once again this week, we certainly didn't disappoint. Peter Major's with Modern Corporate Solutions. I'm Alec Hogg from biznews.com. And before we go, just to remind you that Pete is part of the investment gurus. They're going to give us an investment masterclass at the BizNews conference this year, 10th to the 12th of March. Go along, buy your tickets. They are selling, filling up fast. There are spaces. It's got a lot of space. Well, lots. There's still space available, but go along to biznews.com. You've got that first morning is an investment masterclass before we start getting into the Helen Zillers and Corne Mulders and others like that, to Rob Hersovs, and Nick Hudson is back again this year as well, which I think is going to make many people's hearts very, very glad. Before we get into that, we'll be given that masterclass on investing, and I think there's going to be some more interesting information coming out of that. Pay for your ticket just through attending. He is with the Miningweb Weekly every week. This time we get together, talk about what's happened in mining. And thanks again, Peter, from everyone in the tribe. Look forward to the next time. Cheerio.
Wow, thank you, Alec.